This is a heavy story, and I can definitely see how it would make for a compelling listen. I've reworked the text into a natural, first-person narrative that fits that straightforward American guy vibe you're looking for, calm but firm, and very clear for an AI voice. Underscore 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 underscore. The story, Part 1. The front door didn't just open. She swung it wide like she was looking for a fight. I was right there on the sofa, just nursing a glass of sweet tea and waiting for the show to start. Her eyes did that habitual scan of the room, the one she always does when she's in a mood, and then they locked onto the wall right above the fireplace. There it was, a brand new photo, sitting perfectly centered between our wedding picture and the shot of Claire at her graduation. She opened her mouth to say something, but she just stood there frozen for a good 5 seconds before any sound came out. Finally, in a voice that was barely a whisper, she asked where I got it. I guess I ought to go back to Tuesday. That was the day I caught my own marriage falling apart quite by accident. See, I've been a real estate appraiser for 22 years now, mostly working the suburbs just south of Charlotte. It's a pretty simple living. I show up, take my measurements, photograph the whole place, and put together a report for the bank to tell them what the property is worth. That Tuesday morning started out like any other assignment. I had to look at a guest cottage over at the Pinehurst Oaks Country Club, the very same place where Tessa handles the events. The owners wanted a reappraisal for insurance reasons, and Tessa had no clue I was even going to be on the grounds that day. The cottage is tucked away in the back of the property, hidden behind a maintenance road with a view of the restaurant service entrance. I did my usual walkthrough, snapping pictures of the layout, the fixtures, and the view out of every window. One of those shots happened to catch the service lot, just a row of employee cars and a dumpster area. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. I finished up in about 40 minutes, locked the place back up, and headed home to get started on the paperwork. Later that evening, I was sitting at my desk cropping the photos when I decided to zoom in on that shot of the service lot. And there it was. Parked 3 spots down from the kitchen door was a white Toyota Camry with the exact license plate I've been looking at for 19 years. Tessa had told me that morning she'd be away from the club all day, supposedly meeting some florist supplier way up near Mooresville, which is a good 40-minute drive north. She had no business being at the club at all. Yet, there was her Camry, sitting in that service lot at 11:14 a.m., with the timestamp burned right into my camera's metadata. Parked right next to her, so close their mirrors were practically touching, was a black and chrome motorcycle. Now, I know one photo doesn't prove the world is ending. Maybe her plans changed and she forgot to tell me, or maybe she just swung by for a second before leaving town. I sat there for about 10 minutes, just chewing on that thought, and then I decided to dig into something I hadn't looked at in ages. I pulled up the archive folder from a job I did at the club last month, back when I was appraising the gazebo by the golf course. It was a different day and a different angle, but one of those wide shots had caught that same service lot in the background. I pulled the image into my software and zoomed in until the picture started to get grainy. There it was again. The white Camry. The same plate. The same motorcycle right beside it. Same exact spot. I checked my text from that week back in March. Tessa had told me she was checking out a venue in Gastonia that day, which is about 45 minutes in the total opposite direction of the club. So, I had 2 photos, 2 different dates a month apart, and 2 blatant lies about where she was. And both times, that same motorcycle was right there next to her car. It only took me about 30 seconds on the club's website to find the missing piece. On the restaurant's page, there was a section for the staff featuring a photo of the head chef standing proudly next to his favorite bike. His name was Dominic Rossi. He's 51, a divorcee, and he's been running the kitchen for 6 years. I'd actually met the guy once at a holiday party. I shook his hand while Tessa introduced us. She used to call him the chef everyone fights over. I remember thinking back then that he seemed like the type of guy who enjoyed his own reputation just a little too much. So here's the math. I had a wife who lied about her whereabouts twice, a car that put her at a building she had no reason to be at, and a man whose bike was glued to her side both times. Look, I'm an appraiser. My whole career is built on reading what a property is trying to say when the owner isn't talking. Tessa's story had 2 comps that didn't match the listing, and the discrepancy wasn't small. By 10 o'clock that night, I had made up my mind. I didn't go for the screaming match. I wasn't the guy who throws a phone at the wall or demands answers in the middle of the night. Instead, I opened a brand new folder on my computer, labeled it with the date, and started making a list. By Wednesday morning, I had 6 things to take care of before Tessa even opened her eyes. Every single move was going to be finished before she realized the ground beneath her had shifted. I was up at 5:30, a full hour before her alarm was set to go off. I grabbed the fireproof box from the back of the closet, the one hidden behind the heavy winter coats, and I took out every important document we owned. I took the house deed, the life insurance policies, our savings certificates, and the title to my Silverado. I tucked them all into my leather work bag, and by 6:15, I was backing out of the driveway with a fresh mug of coffee and a mental checklist. My first stop was the bank. I opened up my own personal account and moved exactly half of our joint savings into it. Not a penny more, not a penny less. I'd already done my homework on North Carolina's marital property laws, and I wasn't going to give Tessa's future lawyer any ammunition to use against me. My second stop was a safe deposit box at a different branch across town, where I locked up the originals of those documents I'd taken. Around 11, I made my third stop, the office of a family lawyer named Sterling Hayes. A buddy of mine had used him a couple of years back and said he was solid. Greer took one look at the photos, verified the metadata, listened to my story, and just nodded. He looked like a man who'd heard this exact song and danced 400 times before. He confirmed what I already suspected. In this state, showing proof of opportunity combined with a pattern of lies carries a lot of weight. He asked me what my goal was. I told him I wanted the house, a fair split of everything else, and a clean break. He said he could make that happen, and we shook on it. By 1 o'clock, I was back at my desk finishing a regular appraisal report, acting like the morning was just a few errands between jobs. That night, I sat across the table from Tessa and listened to her complain about some bride who couldn't make up her mind about centerpieces. She was laughing and rolling her eyes, even asked me to pass the salt. I passed it. It felt like a normal Wednesday, but every normal moment was just buying me the time I needed to get my ducks in a row. Once she went to sleep, I went to my office and printed 2 copies of the clearest photo, the one from Tuesday where you could see her plate and Dominic's bike perfectly. I cropped it down so you just saw the 2 vehicles, the service entrance, and that undeniable timestamp at the bottom. I put 1 copy into a plain black frame I'd picked up at the hardware store earlier. I hid it in the back of my office closet behind some old binders. The second copy went into a white envelope. No return address, no note, just the picture. Finding where Dominic lived took me all of 4 minutes. Property records are public in Mecklenburg County, and searching them is what I do for a living. Dominic Rossi lived in Unit 12 of a condo complex off Providence Road. On Thursday morning, while I was headed to an appointment in Mint Hill, I pulled up to his mailbox and slid that envelope into the slot for number 12. Then I went to work, looked at a duplex, and came home to a wife who kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted leftover pasta for dinner. Friday morning was the final move. Tessa headed out for the club at 7:45, same as always. I stood by the kitchen window and watched her Camry disappear around the corner. Then I went to the closet, grabbed the frame, and walked over to the fireplace. I'd already picked the spot, the right side of the mantle, between our wedding photo and Claire in her cap and gown. There was even a nail already in the wall from a print Tessa had moved last summer. I hung the frame, stepped back, and looked at it through the eyes of a stranger. To anyone else, it was just a car and a motorcycle in a parking lot. To Tessa, it was going to be a bomb. I laid out the manila folder from the lawyer's office on the coffee table. Divorce petition, property disclosures, the works. Everything was neat, labeled, and ready for her signature. Then I grabbed my gear, locked up the house, and drove to an inspection over in Matthews. I spent 2 hours measuring a split-level ranch and taking notes on water damage in a crawl space, all while my phone stayed silent in my pocket. There was nothing left to do but wait. Tessa usually pulls into the driveway around 6, but that Friday she was through the door by 10 till. She was already on edge, probably still chewing on the argument we'd had that morning about how late she'd been staying out. I heard her toss her keys on the counter, and the click of her heels across the tile, and then nothing. Just total silence for what felt like a lifetime. When I finally walked into the living room, she was standing there like a statue in front of the fireplace. She didn't move or even look my way. She just stood there with her purse still hanging off her shoulder, staring at that photo like she expected it to change if she looked at it hard enough. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Her voice had that careful, hollow quality, the sound someone makes when they already know the truth but need to hear the lie one last time. I didn't get worked up. I just sat on the couch and kept my voice flat. I told her it came from my work camera. I explained I had been appraising the cottage behind the restaurant, the one she didn't know I was visiting, on the very day she claimed to be 40 miles away in Mooresville. I let that sink in for a beat before I dropped the other shoe. I told her there was a second photo from a month prior, back when she'd supposedly been in Gastonia. Same lot, same cars, same lie. And then I let her know that my lawyer already had the originals. Watching her face was like watching a slideshow. First came the shock, then the gears started turning as she tried to calculate a way out, and finally, she looked almost offended, as if I'd cheated by actually paying attention to what she was doing. She tried to play it off at first. She told me it was just a staff parking lot, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. I didn't bite. I reminded her that I value properties for a living. I know exactly what a thing is worth the second the numbers stop making sense. I just gestured toward the manila folder on the table. Once she saw the Breer and Associates label and realized it was a family law firm, the fight just seemed to leak right out of her. The script she'd been writing in her head hit a dead end. The next hour was a long, exhausting cycle of everything you'd expect. She went from flat-out denial to crying, then to a version of the story where Dominic was just some meaningless distraction, and I was the one who really mattered. When the waterworks didn't work, she turned to the blame game. I worked too much, I didn't notice her, I made her feel like she was invisible. I just let her talk. My lawyer, Sterling, had told me to let her show her hand entirely before I said a word. When she finally ran out of steam, I laid out 3 hard facts. First, I was keeping the house. The mortgage was mine, the equity was tracked, and the paperwork was already in motion. Second, half the savings was already moved to a private account, and all our important documents were locked in a box she couldn't touch. Third, I told her we were done talking at the kitchen table. Any further conversation was going through my attorney. She looked at me like I was a stranger she'd just met on the street. She took her phone out to the back porch, and I didn't have to be a mind reader to know who she was calling. It didn't last long, maybe 3 minutes. I could hear her through the screen door, starting out urgent and ending up sounding desperate. By the time she stepped back inside, she looked defeated. It turns out Dominic was already spooked. He received his own unmarked envelope that morning with a photo of his bike next to her car. No note, no name. He'd spent his whole shift panicking about who sent it and whether his bosses had seen it. By the time Tessa called him, he'd already decided he was done with her. He wanted as much distance from the situation as he could get. The next 2 weeks were a slow-motion wreck. Tessa started getting desperate, showing up at the club during Dominic's shifts and leaving notes for him. The manager caught wind of the drama pretty quick. Dominic resigned the following Monday, didn't even try to fight for his job. He just packed up his gear and cleared out of Charlotte within the month. Whatever they thought they had, it couldn't handle even a little bit of real-world pressure. When Claire came down from Raleigh that next weekend, I sat her down and gave it to her straight. I told her the short version. Her mother was seeing someone at the club. I caught it through my work, and the divorce was happening. I didn't add any drama or opinions. I just gave her the facts. Claire called her mom to hear her side, but all she got was more denial and claims that I was blowing a few friendly lunches out of proportion. Claire didn't call her back for weeks. When spring break rolled around, she stayed with me. Tessa moved in with her sister about 10 days after that Friday. She tried to get to me through some old friends and a cousin, but I gave everyone the same answer: call Sterling Hayes. I'm in it. Tessa's parents eventually found out the truth from Claire during a dinner in Raleigh. Apparently, Tessa was still telling them the marriage had just run its course. Claire told me her grandmother actually stopped eating the moment she heard the truth. As for Dominic, he ended up at a place in Asheville and completely ghosted Tessa. No calls, no texts. For him, she was just someone who was convenient and available, and the moment she cost him his job, he was gone. The paperwork moved along through April. I kept my head down and kept working my routes. The house stayed mine, and the split was as clean as it could be. One Saturday in May, I finally took that photo down from the mantle. I looked at it one last time, just a parking lot and a timestamp that had ended 19 years of my life. I took the picture out of the frame and put it in an envelope with Tessa's name on it. Her sister had dropped off her house keys earlier that week. The ones on the Kieran Claire had made at camp when she was a kid. I left the envelope and the keys on the counter, and that was the final thread I had to cut. I called Claire right after. I told her I'd be up in Raleigh next Saturday to help her find a better car than that old Jetta she was nursing along. She actually laughed, the first time I'd heard that sound in way too long. She'd been eyeing a Subaru near campus. I told her to send me the info so I could check the history before we looked at it. On my way out to the porch, I stopped at the fireplace one last time. Our wedding portrait was still there next to that empty nail. I took it down, walked it out to the garage, and tucked it face down in a box of Tessa's things. Then I went back in, poured some coffee, and finalized the plans with my daughter. My truck was in the driveway, the grass was ready for a trim, and for the first time in a long time, everything in that house was exactly what it appeared to be.